Are single child-free people really happy, or are they forcing themselves to be happy? Are they playing and going against the grain of what is actually, and you should see my air quotations, normal? Or is this just all a societal preference that they're trying to pressure people into believing that all people who are child free are miserable? Or are they actually living their best lives? Let's talk about it. We're about to voice it with Fran Lavoie. Tune in. Welcome to Voice It with Fran Lavoie. I am your host, Fran Lavoie. And based on the title of this podcast or YouTube video, you'll see that we're going to tackle the topic that has become so popular on my timeline and just things that I've experienced in conversations with people based in my society about being child free. Now, being child free is not always a choice. This is my disclaimer before I dive in. There are people who cannot physically bear children. No matter how hard they've tried, they cannot bear children of their own. And that is not a laughing matter. And that is not something that should be discussed as to what is quote unquote wrong with those people. That's a sensitive topic, and that's something that people should not really rag on those people in that population about. I'm very, very protective of people, and I know people who physically, no matter how hard they've tried and no matter how healthy they are, they just have not been able to bear children at that time or yet. And even if they did, it was a journey. And if anyone wants children and they're physically unable to, my heart goes out to you, because I understand how trying and emotional and how difficult that can be for you and your partner. So I'm empathetic to that. Disclaimer is done. Let's move on. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I can recount my own experience, because there's so many people sharing their experiences on being child free, particularly their experiences when they tell people that it is by choice. This is what I'm talking about today. People who want to be child free by choice. And the outrage that people give and the outrage that has been received because of their choices. Let's get into it. So, I'm, on YouTube, and I like to have an open mind. Everybody has their opinions. Everybody has their biases because of how they were raised and just what they're around, and it informs their views. And as a result, I can think that's very narrowing and that's very boxing in. So I like to open up my mind to the people around me, because the people around me have to be respected too, especially if I want respect and they deem me quote unquote different, and it's very cool to get to know people's lives and why people feel how they feel and why people do what they do. So, I was scrolling on YouTube and I saw a video pop up about being child free. I don't know if I watched something on YouTube that allowed them to suggest this on my feed, but here it came up. And then when I looked on the suggested videos, I saw a slew of videos from particularly mostly women, Black, white, Asian, just all different ethnicities and races, where they shared their stories of being child free. and why they're doing it by choice. Now, there are several reasons, and I want to put out there that some of those reasons have to do, and obviously, it will always have to do with what you've been through and what your experiences have been growing up, or even up until recently, that makes you decide that you don't want to do it by choice. Remember, I'm talking about by choice, not you had no choice, but by choice. You're making a decision within yourself that you don't want to do this at all. And you're healthy, and you're in like childbearing range, and you just don't want to do it. A lot of people seem to have had issue with that. However, I just want to point out a few things that makes me understand why people say they don't want to do it. And then I'll go a little bit into my experiences being 37 years old and being child-free myself. I'm not necessarily saying that it's by choice for me, but I celebrate my life as a single child-free woman. And it doesn't mean that I don't necessarily want children. It just means that I'm not necessarily sitting here sulking or wishing and waiting. And I think that that should be recognized, and that should be left alone and not chastised. According to the Pew Research Center, some 44% of non-parents ages 18 to 49 say that it's not too or not likely at all that they will have children someday. An increase of 7 percentage points from the 37% who said the same in 2018 in that previous survey. Meanwhile, 74% of adults younger than 50 who are already parents say that they are unlikely to have more kids, virtually unchanged since 2018. So, a majority of 56% of non-parents younger than 50 who say that it's unlikely that they will have children someday say that they just don't want to have kids. Childless adults younger than 40 are more likely to say this than those ages 40 to 49, 60% versus 46% respectively. There are no differences by gender. Among childless adults who say that they have some other reason for thinking that they won't have children in the future, no single reason stands out. About 2 in 10, 19%, say that it's due to medical reasons, 17% say it's for financial reasons, and 15% say that it's just because they don't have a partner. Roughly 1 in 10 say that their age or their partner's age 10%, or the state of the world 9% is a reason they don't plan to have kids. An additional 5% cite environmental reasons, including climate change, and 2% say that their partner does not want children. When it comes to 18 to 49-year-old parents who say that they're unlikely to have more children in their future, again, a majority, 63%, say it's because they just don't want to. Fathers at a whopping 69% are more likely to say this than mothers at 59%, as are parents younger than 40 at 71% when compared to those 40 to 49 at 57%. Okay? So what does that mean? I mean, I think it is obvious that not everybody in the world wants to have children, particularly people in childbearing or women in childbearing age. Based on that research, you just heard it. Now, there are reasons, just like it was stated, it could be medical reasons, which is the disclaimer I gave in the beginning. Unfortunately, there are people out there that whether they wanted to or not, they couldn't bear the children, or they could not conceive. Financial reasons is another important reason because, hey, guess what? Sometimes because of how expensive things are and how, formula is expensive, diapers, childcare, all types of things and all these expenses went, it's logical to look at how much money you make compared to what it takes to afford children and just say, at this time in my life, or maybe never, due to how much money I intend to make or how much money I think I'm going to make, I'm not going to be able to afford these kids. And I mean, there's a lot of people that will have children without a partner, but there's 15% of people that if they're not going to have a partner, they not having them. Okay. And 9%, they, the state of the world, okay, especially during the pandemic, made a huge, huge like change of heart for people to say, you know what? This is crazy. So I don't even want to bring children into this world. How about that? So when you have all that just stacked up, it is easy to look at people, especially if you're a person who's gung-ho about being a mom or a dad and you love, love, love kids and all your life you wanted to be a parent. It's easy to look at someone, according to this research, who is under 40 that tells you, look, I don't think kids are in the radar for me. And if you are, in my opinion, a very closed off or narrow-minded person, you're just like trying to justify their reasonings for them. And it's like, no, I just told you. Or you're trying to convince them that maybe it's because they don't have this or they don't have that. Well, what if you run into someone who has a partner who is happily married, or is in a relationship that is financially stable and all that, and they have all the, on the outside looking in, all the tools and everything set up to have kids, and they just tell you, yeah, it's just not in the radar for us. It's not in the clouds. It's not in the cards, rather. They just don't want to do it. So are you going to judge that person? Or are you going to make them feel like, yeah, you don't even know what you're talking about, man. Like, watch, when you have kids, you're just going to have a change of heart. And that's it's like, that's very dangerous, and I also want to speak to, the Christian community, because this is my community. I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Jesus. And there's a narrative that, yes, while God wants you to procreate and he wants you to bear children, because that's just something that he put sex in place for, as well as for pleasure. Remember, I just mentioned that sex is also for pleasure too. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have children. And when you make it in the narrative that once you get married and, it's time to have a baby, or you could have children, that has been a very damaging narrative and perspective that has been put on, newlyweds or couples who have been married for 5 years, 10 years, and they haven't had children, or even people who are engaged, because you're already expecting it. Now, I'm not saying that anticipating wanting to have a baby with your husband as a believer and raising the child as they should go and all that, I'm not saying that it's bad to desire that. You can make your desires and your requests known to God, but it's only he that determines if it will happen and when it will happen. And that's a big if, because we don't know what God will do. I am of the belief that not every person is meant to be a parent. And for those reasons, I have my views. Like I told you before, I am a person that feels like whatever God has for me is going to be for me. That includes whether or not I'm going to have a baby, whether or not I'm going to get married, whether or not a door is going to open for me in certain aspects of my life, or it's going to remain closed and I'm going to have to believe him for another way. Or maybe it's that same, it's the same thing, but just another door has to open and I can't rely on this particular resource. For example, if we want to, keep talking about children per se. God might lead me to marry someone, right? And, that person is the one for me, or, what I mean? We are compatible. We love each other. We love the Lord. And boom, he proposes. I say yes. We're about to get married. And I might, what if I put the pressure on myself to say, you know what? Or I just have a desire, not even pressure. I have the desire to have a baby in a year and a half. Or, you know what? I want to enjoy my husband for a year and be child free for a year. And then, I'm going to try to have a baby, when I'm married in 2 years, or 2 years into my marriage, I should say. What if that doesn't happen? What if God sees fit that I remain childless for 10 years, 20 years? We hear those stories all the time where someone got married when they were 20 and, they were both 20 and they had miscarried. And as soon as they stopped trying, they had a baby when they were 31. So that means it was 11 years of them being child free. But in those 11 years, how was their heart condition, in the sense, not like your cardiovascular health, that while that's important too, but what was your mindset? When people say, where was your heart at? It's what was your mindset? Were you sulking those 11 years? Were you miserable those 11 years because you couldn't conceive? Were you, granted, maybe they had miscarriages, and that is devastating. I'm not going to, gloss over that as if it's not meant to be, empathetic towards. Yes, miscarrying is a very, very sad. It's very sad to miscarry. It's very sad to miscarry. However, it's the mindset of, outside of miscarrying, what if you're just not getting pregnant? Not even holding a baby. You're just not getting pregnant. And you're this married couple and there's people around you, and what if there are people pressuring you or asking questions that you don't have answers to because you're just not getting pregnant, or you're just not conceiving? I mean, you're just not, carrying a baby to term. It's, to me, it's a very insensitive topic. I have always tried to be mindful of asking couples, asking single women and men, when they were going to get married or when they're going to have children, in a way that seems pressuring. If I don't know you like that, I'm not asking those questions. Even if I know you like that, I've learned to tread lightly. Now, I'm not perfect in that manner, but you don't know where people are. You don't know where their emotional state is about those topics, whether they care if you ask or not, or whether it's something that they can't stop thinking about because it hurts them so much that they don't yet have it, because it's something that they idolize, whether they realize it's an idol or not. For me, I've seen so many people idolize relationships and idolize, like, just these familial milestones that, while I like companionship and I want to get married and I want to have a loving relationship, I can't idolize that, let alone idolize having a baby. Because my belief and my stance on it is, while I get lonely at times, we all do, while raising up children is a beautiful thing, it's also very difficult. Two things can be true at the same time, which is what we call a dichotomy. Two things can happen at once, where this can be beautiful and it can also get ugly. I am very aware of that reality, as most of my friends are married with children or are married, and they tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. I also have some friends who are divorced, and they are divorced with children, and they have to co-parent, and they didn't expect it to happen. And that is life. Whether you're a Christian or not, I know people and they tell me their experiences. And for me, there's no sense in envying a person's life, and there's no sense in asking someone, getting back to the point, why they are child free. There's several reasons why. And we went through them. And it's also very dangerous to assume, as I end, that a person who doesn't have a child is suffering or is hurt or is jealous or is envious, which more or less is the same thing. And I heard somebody say that there's nothing wrong with being jealous. It's when because sometimes it's like, okay, dang, like, I want that. You better want it for yourself before you get jealous of a person to the point where it turns to envy and rage and hatred. My thing is that jealousy and envy can be interchangeable. I just feel like I don't want what anybody else has. I want what God has for me. And certainly being a mother before my time, or being a mother at all, is not something that I want if it's not for me. Because guess what happens when you try to wish for things or force things that aren't for you? You end up wanting something that is in no way, shape, or form your reality. Then what happens? You start forcing situations. You start making up narratives and developing fantasies and just projecting these things upon yourself that weren't ever meant to be projected upon you. You join in with people who have their narratives about how your life should go. And at the end of the day, you don't even know where you're going with your life. Only God knows. You make plans and God laughs. There are some plans that you can make because you have goals. And obviously, if you want to achieve goals, you set up actions and you set up shop to achieve those goals. But because that's wise, However, if it's not for you, no matter how much you set up shop, at some point you just have to take heed to that and just relax into your reality and be grateful for how you live. I live an awesome life. And I can honestly say that all my years living, I've never envied a person or never wanted what anybody else had, particularly a child, particularly a husband, because I know that when the time is right, it's going to happen for me. And even if it does not happen for me, as much as it would be nice, I know and I have faith that God has a form of companionship out there for me, in friendship, in community, that is going to fulfill me. And it's out there. We just have to look for it and be open to what is in store for us instead of deciding what's in store for us. Because being child free can be beautiful if you allow it to be, instead of wishing for things. And being child free can be wonderful once you let go of societal norms. And if you don't hold on to societal norms and you're cooling, I want to applaud you, because you have unlocked the key of life that Amarion supposedly has unlocked by being unbothered. Well, I have voiced it. And I want to know what you think about this child-free topic. You heard my stance on it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm tripping? Are you a person who's child-free that has something to comment? Even if you have children, hopefully you love them and you don't regret them. I know that there is a community of people out there that unfortunately regret their children and regret their choice to have kids. There's so many perspectives out there that we have to love on and respect. But I want to hear them. Drop down in the comments on YouTube and download this podcast and share it with a friend who can relate, and even those who may have a different opinion, just so that we can get the conversation started. I'd love to hear from you. You can also email me at voiceitwithfranlavoie@gmail.com. Follow me on wherever you stream podcasts, and you can follow me on IG at the same name, as well as YouTube at the same name. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful night.